Solid is a JavaScript framework for building interactive web applications. It does the same kind of work as React, Vue, or Svelte, and enhances your components by using reactivity, which is a powerful way to link your user interfaces with data seamlessly. Here are 6 key differences with React. The Solid components look just like React components because they use JSX too. The main difference is the HTML attribute format remains unchanged, so there's no need for camel casing when setting them, like using class for class names instead of class name keyword, for example. The same applies to style properties. Although similar to React because of using objects, they don't follow the camel casing syntax. Solid uses signals to create reactive state variables. To create a counter component, for example, we use the create signal primitive with the initial value of our count value. This function returns an array with 2 elements. The first element returns the current value of the state variable, while the second element updates the state variable with a new value. This works just like the useState hook in React. The main difference is that in React, the getter value is the current value of the state variable, while in Solid, it's a function that returns the current value of the state variable when called. If we want to subscribe to a state value so that we can perform an action whenever it changes in React, we use useEffectHook and put that state variable in the dependency array of the hook. In Solid, we use the createEffectHook. The main difference being we don't need to provide a dependency array to control when it should be called. Solid handles that for us. In React, to render multiple items from an array, we use array.map function and return components with a key prop to track re-renders. Solid has 4 primitives to handle such loops. If an element in the array changes, it updates only that element in the DOM, and also you don't need to provide a key prop to prevent unnecessary re-renders. It handles that for you. In React, when you want to conditionally render a component or its children, you can use an early return. Like here, we return a default view early when a user is logged out and return the user info when logged in. So the returned component differs according to different variables. This won't work in Solid since Solid components render only once. Whatever is returned by the component should contain the necessary information about all the states it supports, which means this type of conditional rendering won't work. To address this, Solid has a show primitive that handles conditions. You provide a when prop, which is the condition to be checked in order to render the children, and a fallback prop in case that condition is false. If you want to perform asynchronous tasks, like say, fetch a random dog image from this API in React, we can start by setting up 3 state variables, one for the API response, one for the loading states, and another for the error states if there is an error. We can then fetch the data in a useEffectHook and set the data, loading states, and error states. Finally, we use conditional rendering to return different views when the data is loading, has an error, or returns successfully. Solid does this differently. It has another primitive called createResource where we can pass the data fetching function as an argument. The data fetching function is an asynchronous function that returns a value. Once it completes, the returned value is stored in the first element of the array returned by createResource. We can then use the show primitive to display loading states when loading and the image when the data is loaded.